Hello and welcome to the Mac and Benz podcast. I'm your host, Tom Bridge. It's wonderful to see you all here live in Brighton, England, here at the Hilton Metropole. It is a pleasure to be with some wonderful people. It's been an amazing couple of days. So I feel we'll start to introduce our guests. So I'll start from the far side. Liam Donnelly from Jigsaw, welcome to the Mac and Benz podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Yeah, thank you very much. Great week as well, by the way.
Yep.
Thanks again to the organisers and everyone that's put in the hard time and all the speakers as well, because it's been absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
But I'm Liam, technical lead at Jigsaw 24.
Fantastic. And Elliot Jordan, welcome back.
Hi, thank you for having me.
And I was going to say, I think you've changed position since the last time we talked on the podcast?
No.
No, okay. It's been a little minute. So, but yes, I was going to say one of our platform engineers at Netflix.
Yep.
So, and welcome to the Mac and Benz podcast, Kat McDonald.
Thank you very much. I'm an IT support analyst at the SAIL Glasgow College. Glad to be here, and this is the second time at Macadoc, and I've absolutely enjoyed it.
Fantastic. Well, yeah, I was going to say, I wanted to open things up and start to talk a little bit about usually we talk about origin stories when we've got new people on the podcast. I kind of want to talk about people's conference origin stories today in terms of the first time you presented at a conference or, the first time you got to attend this kind of event, because I think that those are valuable stories to tell people. I know, Elliot, you were at the very first Macadoc, back at the St. James Theater. You want to tell? You also had my favorite presentation title of all time with that one.
How not to do bad things without a package. That was a fun one to put together, and I think I took that to 2 or 3 different conferences and had a lot of fun presenting. But yeah, it was a little bit more cramped back then in London around Soho and Westminster, but it was a lot of fun, and it's great to come out to Brighton and see a different part of England this time. It was very welcoming.
Yeah, for sure. And so, Liam, your first conference, I was going to say, what was the first conference you gave a talk at?
To give a talk at was actually here last year, to be fair, so it's a pretty recent one for me, so it's a nice and easy one to remember. On this stage here, I'm absolutely terrified beforehand, because it's quite a wide, sort of large stage, and it's quite a big room as well, and you've got to feel like you've got to fill it when you're kind of up there and over. And then you kind of get up on stage, blink, and it is over. Yeah, you don't remember absolutely anything you said, and just hope that you said the right things. Yeah, it was here last year that we did our first talk, which is a sort of incredible. You kind of get an itch for it to do it again, but yeah, we'll see.
Fantastic. And Kat, how about you?
It was GNUC 2022. I kind of decided to put in a pitch for a talk. Didn't actually think that I would be considered. Didn't even ask any management if that was okay. I just kind of put it in.
Ask for forgiveness, not permission.
Yeah, and then I checked my spam folder, and then I was like, oh, by the way, you've actually been accepted. And I was like, okay, now I'm actually going to have to talk to management about this. So they were in love with me.
Well, I was going to say, there's that moment of, what's the word I'm looking for? Terror.
Yeah.
When you realize that you actually have to give the talk you pitched. And, that was, in fact, a good idea. I was going to say, I think every speaker out there has been through that moment where, you've gotten a talk accepted. Oh, no, I have to write it now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, and slide prep is always an adventure, right? I was going to say, communicating your message is really key. And I will agree with Liam, this stage is massively wide. It's probably, about 10 meters, give or take? To 25?
Too wide, I think
it's too wide. And it was great. I made my step goal today, just doing my talk back and forth and, in front of the audience here. And I was going to say, I apologize to the camera operator because he had to track me the whole way.
It's a trick, though, because it's wide but not deep.
It's not deep,
so
yeah.
You could entertain the audience greatly by falling off the front and the back.
Correct.
It's a good icebreaker.
Yeah. Well, and I was going to say, the St. James Theater, where they had the first Macadoc, there were 2 rooms. There was it was almost like a jazz cabaret lounge in the basement, and had a mezzanine balcony. And so you're presenting, and you're like, should I break into song? How does this go? And yeah, I was going to say, fun rooms all over the place in terms of how that shakes out. So we saw a lot of great talks today and yesterday, and I want to give folks a chance to kind of highlight out some of the best things that you saw this week. So, I was going to say, Elliot, what was what was your talk that was the takeaway this year?
I really enjoyed Molly's accessibility talk. Mm-hmm. I found that it was pretty easy for me to understand, and I mean, this is this shouldn't be a new concept, but for me to hear again that accessibility improvements are everyone's improvements, that they help everybody use
Yes.
the tool better, it clicks, you know, and it makes me think about what tools am I deploying, how am I interacting with my colleagues that I'm helping get their job done in a way that may be exclusionary or
Yes.
could be improving everybody's experience by targeting people with accessibility needs. And realizing that we all have accessibility needs too. Wearing glasses, wearing hearing aids, it's pretty common to have at least something. So yeah, I liked being reminded of that.
I did too. I thought that, it was really, really very interesting to think about this in terms of just not, how do we take away those barriers to interaction? Because that's what really is the difference between a person who can be successful at work and who can't. And if we're, artificially placing those boundaries there, intentionally or not, it's our responsibility to make those situations more accessible to more people, based on their needs. Because we got to bring the people into the job.
And being reminded that the web content accessibility guidelines exist, and that's something I'm going to be Googling and kind of following. More than just a checklist, though, it's kind of just a way of thinking about how are we creating obstacles between people that we don't need to. I like that.
For sure. Liam, how about you?
Yeah, we were obviously just talking about this beforehand, and being a bit of a sponsor, I didn't get to see as many sessions as I would like. So building that ever-long list of YouTube videos and that YouTube library is going to get quite long when I sort of get back. I mean, in terms of my favourite thing at the event was actually talking to people that had been in the talks and attended them and say, like, what did you take away? And then get me excited for watching them after as well. I've got a long list, but the one that I definitely did get to watch was Holly yesterday doing the neurodiversity, a subject that is obviously incredibly important, just the same as the accessibility conversation as well, and give us all kind of something to think about, this happens all around us. It's, at workplace and things to consider about, the people that are around us and the people that we do work with. I think that's the most important thing that you can take away from something like this, and something that you may not have come here to learn or consider. And I think that's incredibly important and exciting as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Kat?
Yeah, I would agree with Holly, the neurodivergency, because that is a conversation that's happening pretty much everywhere. Might not be happening in a workplace, but that's somewhere that it kind of needs to start happening. And it's kind of like, because burnout is a massive problem for people who have got neurodivergence. So it's kind of good to have that conversation, bring in as like, well, how can we help you and support you in your workplace? But also, I really also enjoyed Dan's Wi-Fi talk. I like the sarcasm. That is definitely my cup of tea.
Yes. I was going to say, well, and Wi-Fi lends itself so well, as we proved in the middle of the session when when demos go wrong. I mean, I was going to say those are sometimes things that happen, and I was going to say certainly the Hilton's Wi-Fi network has been an adventure this week, for a lot of folks. But I was going to say these are day-to-day issues that we see in all of our businesses. The Wi-Fi is a huge part of our life now, and I was going to say when you think about that, it's about 25 years old now since we've been rolling out the first of those gray saucer airports back in 1999, 2000 era. We've come a long way in terms of, hey, one megabit per second if we were very, very fortunate to, 1 megabit per second if we were very, very fortunate on the Hilton network today. But, we think about a lot of the outgrowth of all of the sessions today. And yesterday, I saw so many people talking about new technologies, things that we haven't talked about before. I want to give a huge shout out to the team from Microsoft who's here talking about Intune. And they flashed up a slide. What are all of the things that we've done over the last 2 years? And the print was so fine. They've really been busy with Intune.
And the roadmap, what they're working on next.
Yes.
Really happy to see that transparency.
Yes. What's that like? I'm a little unclear.
Yeah.
I was going to say, because we're 2 weeks away from Worldwide Developers Conference, where we find out all the things we don't yet know for just 3 months from now. And so having a little bit of a transparent roadmap can make a huge difference. So
And Tom, I don't want to butter you up or anything, but I really enjoyed your session too about managed Apple IDs.
thank you.
That is a path I haven't started down yet, so I'm trying to take in all the available content to see where the mines are that I need to step around.
Well, and there are tons of them, and they're intentionally placed, and I don't necessarily think that they are necessarily a bad thing. I don't mind having a 60-day window for federation to occur because we have to provide adequate notice to our people that, hey, by the way, you may have set up a personal Apple ID at the company domain. We've got to fix that. That needs to be a non-destructive action, or it needs to be an action that can be taken more authentically and intentionally, not in a hurry. And while that means it's going to take time to roll out those kind of programs, I think that it's really positive to be able to roll out those programs and preserve our users' privacy and save ourselves some budget by not having to buy corporate phones for individuals, but still empower work on personal devices and make them feel safe about that.
I think when you do switch it on, you need to tell everyone how many domain conflicts you have.
I would
Being who
be
you work
fascinated to know in a large domain how big that number is.
We'll see.
I was going to say we're turning it on very soon internally, and I was going to say I know we've seen that number before. I'll be very interested to see it now. And it's going to be a process. We're going to have to talk to a lot of people. Probably a lot of people who've been at our company for a long time. We're going to have a hard conversation. Hey, I know you signed up for that personal Apple ID 8 years ago and have bought all your music on it. We got to move that off of the company domain because you want to preserve those purchases. You don't want to be destructive with that. And there's no way to move those kind of things. And that would have been the other way to handle this, Apple, but that is not how that developed.
But I bought those songs for work.
Yes, because we can all use them. Yes, totally. I get it. So what's one thing you're taking home out of today, out of the sessions this week or out of your conversations this week that you're going to be applying in your day-to-day?
Couple T-shirts.
Couple T-shirts? Yep. There were some really solid, the Kanji T-shirts were really soft.
Good, yeah.
Those were really solid. Marine Layer makes a really fine T-shirt. So yeah,
Picked up a Jamf hat too.
Oh, very nice.
Wear them at the same time, see which one wins.
Liam, how about you?
Oh, I mean, there's so much, really. Lego. There's lots of the little things to fiddle with whilst I'm on Teams calls and sat at home and things and that. I think it's everyone that I've had chance to speak to in every single conversation that I've had and talking about people's experiences and talking about, again, what other people have learned and getting real world scenarios from what people are experiencing in their own industry, I think is the biggest thing that I take away. I work for Jigsaw and I talk to lots of customers every single day about workplace services and workplace technology and everything around that. So for me, it's really great to hear about what everybody's doing and what everybody's using and the way that people are starting to think. And again, staying close to the Microsoft Intune thing and what they're doing and staying close to everything that Jump's doing, staying close to everything that Kanji's doing, and staying close to everything that everybody's doing. It's an incredibly hard task to do, but you try and keep it all together and all bottled up. So I think that's kind of like the biggest thing that I'm going to take away really is the little things that you learn through conversations, natural conversations that you tend to have with other people, because it's useful, really incredibly useful for me as a sort of within the workplace and things like that. So
I try to have an ongoing to-do list of everything that I take as an action item, and I think I wrote down at least 10 or 20 things that I'm going to go home and check on, like, hey, does this apply to me? Just as one example, Armin's talk about naming computers, like there's a lot of it's a relatively straightforward, simple thing you would think, but there's actually a lot of nuance as to how you name devices in an automated way. And during a couple of the recommendations about what not to do, I kind of felt seen in a way that I didn't want to be. I wrote down, hey, maybe we should not do this anymore. So yeah, it's very useful.
Okay.
Probably the testing plans. I've got a team meeting on Tuesday, and I'm thinking, yeah, definitely we should completely implement this. Because since it's my team meeting, it's like we're all subject matter experts in each of our areas. So it's like, yeah, why don't we start maybe doing this?
For sure. And, test planning is so important because I was going to say, you gave a really great talk on what happens when things go wrong. And I was going to say, there isn't a Mac admin in this room who hasn't committed an error. Or if there are, I want to meet you because I want to learn your ways. I was going to say, I've definitely deployed things that needed to get deployed. Deploying Xcode to every device in a 300 device fleet was that was a learning opportunity for me about scoping things correctly, especially when it was a newer version than some of the devs were using at the time. There was some pain. We had to say, I'm sorry, as you pointed out. I'm sorry for the inconvenience.
It's an opportunity to get to know your users very closely.
Well, I was going to say, we get all of these moments where, that is a scary part of our job, right? Like, we are all, in a lot of ways, customer-facing. And, sometimes those are internal customers, sometimes they're external customers. And, I was going to say, the favorite thing that I've ever heard about testing environments is that, every organization has a test environment, and if you're very fortunate, they also have a separate production environment. And I was going to say, those are hard things to develop. In terms of, it's time and effort to spend up a testing environment for smaller institutions. How do you cope with those kind of things? What are individually in your organizations, what's your plan for that?
And with things like MDM, you can mutually exclusively enroll in an MDM. So you have to choose, is this in the prod MDM or is it in test? And if it's in test, how do you sync that with the production policies that they need to be scoped to?
Correct.
It's not trivial.
No, it is very intentional, and you have to have run books that say, all right, if I'm promoting a policy from test to production, how do I get it there? That's very important. So,
I was just going to say, I think a lot of people start to look at how they can build in more automation and efficiency into essentially what they do. If you are building out some convoluted workflow within your test instance, I don't really want to go and rewrite that or redo that again in production because I've already got it there. So a lot of people are, there's a lot of good solutions, a lot of good people around here that have written really great scripts to help move things from test instances to production instances, depending what you're in, whether that's Intune or Jamf or even Kanji, because you don't want to do it twice. I think that's the thing as well. Like, you've done it once, why do I have to do it twice? Because I've done my testing, I know how it works, and I want to just be able to just move that. And that's the biggest thing I would say is look to be lazy in a little way, if that makes sense, is what automation can I bring into my testing? How can I make that as efficient as possible so you have more time to spend on the important tasks as well?
Well, like the software developers say, dry, don't repeat yourself. Dry, don't repeat yourself.
Drive, don't repeat yourself.
There you go. I really enjoy, speaking of test automation and things along those lines, the talk that Chris Chapman gave about the Orca tool set that they are now deploying for organizations that want to automate that kind of testing and that want to do that in virtual machines and virtualization and to be able to have a common set of images that you deploy and test from. It really kind of rang a bell for me. I was really excited about the possibility of doing some automated build testing and things along those lines from that space. Obviously, we still cannot, in virtualization, do the full automated device enrollment workflows, which is a bummer, right? We keep crossing our fingers that Worldwide Developers Conference is in 2 weeks. Maybe maybe that's one that gets checked off the wish list this year. Pretty please. But being able to configure a device in that kind of state is so helpful because then you can kind of see what the canaries are in your particular coal mine.
It's also good for training as well. So obviously if you've got a new Mac admin, it means that you can kind of let them loose on the testing environment and they're not going to be afraid of causing any damage.
Well, exactly, and being able to give somebody the keys to the kingdom and help them learn and help them be trained on a system where destructiveness can actually be a wonderful teacher.
Yes.
Yes. In many ways. And great, you erase that machine. Now you get to learn how to rebuild it before you've done that to the CEO's laptop. So, ideally, yeah, preferentially. So, as we think about coming into Worldwide Developers Conference, as we mentioned, 2 weeks away, there's a lot of things that we're all thinking of. What do we expect out of Apple? What do we hope for? I would love to know what each of you are excited for in terms of learning more with what Apple's been up to. What are you hoping for out of Worldwide Developers Conference this year?
I want to see what they're going to do next with DDM, see how they're going to kind of push further with that. I think it was a great idea, the fact that it kind of checks in with itself. It's like, have you done the thing yet? No, I have not done the thing yet. Then do the thing.
Well, I was going to say, I really appreciate that most of those logic decisions are now on the device. And so you can essentially say, you must be in this state, go put yourself in this state, go do the job. And here are deadlines and timeframes for doing all of those things. We had a really great set of slides on what those alerting behaviors are in software update behaviors. And that's a really detailed view of what the user experience is like. So, Ellie?
Something top of mind for me is that kind of FileVault and Keychain are some of the things that are preventing truly passwordless workflows from happening on the Mac side.
Yes.
You still need that local password to log in for some things. And depending on how often users have to enter that local password, they may not know what it is. They just use their biometric most of the time. So having some improvements to FileVault and Keychain to bring it up to the capabilities that, like, for example, Windows Hello have for passwordless login would be really welcome. But we'll see.
I'm hopeful, but I mean, we still need to figure out how to get that volume unlock key keyed in somewhere. And some kind of support there would be incredibly valuable to a lot of organizations. We all hate passwords, right? I mean, nobody here likes passwords. It's kind of a requirement of the field. So,
yeah, cryptography is hard, though, and I appreciate, like, much smarter people than me have probably tried to solve this, and there's a reason why where there's still a limitation there, but it would be nice to overcome it someday.
Indeed. Liam, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much, isn't there? I mean, when you sort of dive into WWDC and you're watching the live presentation, it tends to be about, all the new sort of user software features. But I know me personally, as soon as that development list is up of the different things that are going on, I'm straight looking for what's new for IT. All the new management framework stuff that starts to come out that you've got to get ahead of, because that stuff's going to come out and come into your environment and can impact your environment in a really positive way. Stuff that we maybe from a feedback perspective, admins have been asking for a long time, can start to creep in. And I think that's all I'm always straight there and then digesting it and seeing how that works and getting to know it. But I think, like Kat said, the declarative device management stuff, as that got announced in, I think, 2021, is we've slowly started to see more and more creep over to declarative device management workflow, getting more of those actions on the device. We obviously saw software update, which was the big one from last year, and obviously everyone's now testing that now and using that now in production and seeing a lot more success in doing it. So it's going to be really interesting to see, what's the next thing that Apple moves over. It's we're obviously not sure until for another 2 weeks yet, so it's we can only speculate at the moment. But I think that's the interesting thing is, that expanding of DDM and really seeing what's next for that.
Another thing I've been talking to a few people about is the friction that currently exists between switching MDMs, and how it would be great to authorize a new URL and new certificate, and then have the Mac, a supervised Mac, just switch to talking to that new MDM from the old one. I don't know. I'm not getting my hopes up or anything, but I think that someday that will be a really nice feature to add.
Indeed. And, we think about the number of different MDMs that are out there now. I think there are probably 3 dozen, people with decent sized estates these days in terms of large organizations doing specialized work. It's logical that you're going to want to switch tools at some point. Having a way to do that that's maybe a little bit less disruptive than rip and replace, because that rip part is a real nasty Band-Aid to tear off these days. I suppose that should be plaster. I'm in the UK. I apologize. But I'm learning. I need to localize, but that's also an accessibility issue. So, sorry, I was going to say this is where I benefit oftentimes from James, and I say sorry, James, and then we take a quick pause, and then we go on to the next question, and he edits out all of it, so we all sound great, right? Like, you get to see behind the curtain today and see us wait for yet another question. So we had a lot of great sponsors here this week. I mean, I was going to say the igloos in particular out in the hallway were a lot of fun. And I was going to say I got a chance to sit down with Microsoft for a few minutes and sit in their igloo, and that was great. Did you guys see any demos that you really liked this week?
I didn't actually, I would have to say, but I have been kind of going to the booths and just kind of chatting because for it's always good to kind of get to know the people who actually work behind the company. I find that actually, that means like, you know, it's, even though you can see how good their product is, it's also the people that you're going to work with. If anything goes wrong, you'll be going to their support desk. So I kind of like talking to the vendors as well. So that's all, I always find that as a really good way of doing it.
I didn't visit the demos per se, but I enjoyed the Kanji auto package processor was demoed during a session.
Yes.
That's a subject close to my heart.
I was going to say.
I was happy to see that. Yeah.
Liam?
Yeah, no, I'm the same. I was going to do a bit of a shameless plug for, only because I know the guys, Craig Hopkins and Bob Bryden, have worked incredibly hard, and I don't know if anyone caught the demo for Monitor 24, because I know how hard they've been working on it for the past couple of months, but giving people that insight into the endpoint security framework, and everyone can go and download that and use that for free now on GitHub. And I hope everyone goes and has a little play around with it and gives them some feedback to give them some functionality to put in the next version and continue to maintain that. But I know that's something they were kind of incredibly excited to share on the demo stage and give, I think from that perspective, give more people insight into how the endpoint security framework works and the loads of events that you get from that, and how to digest that within your environment and that information it gives you, so you can have a more informed decision around certain things that are happening in your environment.
Well, and it's an amazing security toolkit that just isn't available on any other platform in terms of, you know, what are the things that you can look at? How can I look at this live stream of information and actually turn it into, you know, cogent action? As an admin, I was going to say, we spent a lot of time at Endpoint Security Framework over the last 6 months just to try to get a basic USB blocker in, right? Like, I mean, I was going to say, it can do one limited task very, very well, but then you go deep on what it can do at that point, sky's the limit. And it's this big open C API that Apple is really well documented and can do a ton and has a wealth of support out there.
Yeah, really exciting. I mean, it came in Catalina, I think, was like a very early version, and then got modified since in Big Sur and onwards. But again, that's something from a WWDC perspective that gets changed every single year. And this, unknowingly for everyone, affects every single person here, because this is how your security organizations actually get events from their devices to be able to do, you know, what's a malware, what's a ransomware, what is this doing? Is it interacting with this certain process? Is it causing this behavior and thing? And this is actually how a lot of the security vendors work. So, you know, it can be really interesting when you start to dive into it, but also can be a complete minefield, and you can get lost in all that data. So it's, it's definitely worth having a little look at and just seeing the type of stuff that you get back, because this is going on as well on your device without you knowing. This is all happening in the background, so how these apps interact with that framework is really interesting.
For sure. So as we look at the year to come, and so we should all be back here, hopefully in Brighton next year, all together again. What are you hoping for? Not out of Worldwide Developers Conference, not out of the developing process for just Apple stuff. What are you hoping for out of the technological community for the next year in terms of bigger trends or what you're seeing out there in the world? What's one question you hope to have answered between now and next summer?
How do we inspire new people that aren't in this industry to join this industry? New voices, maybe people who are at the beginning of their careers to be interested in Mac admin, Windows admin type careers. I think that's a discussion that some of us have been having, thinking that the population is eventually going to want to retire, right? We don't want to work the rest of our lives, so.
I really don't. I would really enjoy.
I mean, it's okay if you do.
Oh, it's perfectly fine if you do, but I think it's also fine for folks to take breaks or to readjust your career schedule as your life changes. And the hours can be long. Like we know this working in IT. It's systems that our businesses rely on. And it requires a lot of effort, but you can make good money, you can learn a lot of great skills, and I was going to say, getting new people in the door is definitely something near and dear to my heart as the co-chair of the Mac-Admins Foundation.
Yeah. And it can be fun.
It really can.
There's some moments of pain, but there's a lot of fun too. There's creative limitations, and when you overcome those, it feels really good. So
indeed,
I think there's a case to be made for new grads or for people who are early in their careers to really do this intentionally. As opposed to a lot of us who kind of fell into this accidentally. It doesn't have to be that way. You can actually seek this out, and there might be some good reasons to do that.
can.
Yeah, I think I was going to say, it's like, I think with the whole like new Mac admins, I think when it comes to like tech support courses, they're all always kind of very Windows heavy. And yes, Windows is still a very massive behemoth for businesses out there. But it means that when they come into an environment and there's Macs there, they're a bit afraid of what it can do to them. It's like, it's not going to bite you if you're just, it's just, they need to change the Wi-Fi. But no, quite a lot of the time, they don't want to touch it because it's just alien to them. And it's trying to kind of bridge that gap to say, well, it's just in a different place. They work kind of very similar, but it's just in a different place, that's all. Also kind of more kind of building on that diversity in IT hire, because I find that I find that there could be a lot more kind of females, and I know that I came from a predominantly female profession, nursing, to a predominantly male profession, IT. So it's kind of I got to see kind of two sides of the fence, and I think it's just kind of trying to kind of like, I love the problem solving, and that doesn't matter whether you're a female or male or in between. Like, the problem solving is going to be exact same no matter like what you identify as.
Absolutely. Liam, how about you?
Yeah, no, I think to both your point, I spoke to a lot of people this week actually who said, yeah, I've just become Mac admins, or I've just started to pick up the Macs, and I've done it for a year, and it's kind of really exciting to see where those people will be in a couple of years and see how they kind of mold and see how they do it. And the biggest advice I kind of spoke to those people is like, go and talk to people around you. I said, there's a lot of knowledge in this room. There's a lot of knowledge that are out there. People who have been through this and been through that experience that can help you along the way. And I think there's, everything from the Mac Admins Foundation, obviously with the Slack channels and stuff like that, is there's a lot of support out there. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to ask for help is like the biggest advice, obviously, that you could give anybody is, even if you're in a Windows world as well, but coming into the Mac world is, there is that sense of support that's out there. And I think the best thing about these sort of events is you talk to those people on Slack and then see them in person and you're like, oh my God, that is actually you. You do have a face. Do you know what I mean? You are real. So it is really exciting. I think also from a technology sort of space is, when can we buy a Vision Pro? All you Americans have had them for so long now. I mean,
there was one on the floor. There was one on the floor over at one of the Enduo booth today, and folks are getting to try that out for the first time. If I'd have known it would have been such a draw, I'd have brought mine down as well. But I was going to say that is a very good question in terms of how do we expand these new platforms outside of the States at that point.
That's an interesting one. I mean, that's going to be interesting to see where that goes. Apple are pushing that sort of spatial computing message, that sort of work and that enterprise thing. So, your CEO is going to come in when they're available in the UK and say, yeah, I need one for work. Can you set it up? And you go, I don't know how to do it. And obviously it's limited to a sort of a user enrollment sort of process and stuff at the moment. So
right.
Learning that and learning new technologies, how do we apply that sort of AR type of environment and that sort of mixed reality sort of environment into our work industry, and maybe how, if you work in engineering and stuff, like how you apply it as that. I saw a really good video about someone who's used it in, there was a doctor or something, and they used it to do live surgery, and you're just like, this is phenomenal. Wow. Like, how does this even work? But yeah, we can't buy them, so we'll see what happens.
I can see them being like a really kind of useful in education, like especially for teaching medicine, for engineering, things that you kind of, architecture, things that you kind of need to see more in a kind of a spatial awareness. And I think that's opening a huge door there.
For sure.
And the kids just really excited when a dinosaur just jumps out.
Oh, yes.
That'll be the main thing they want, won't it? Yeah.
3D movies can become an actual thing.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I showed a coworker and brought mine with me to a team meeting, and she put it on and then did the dinosaur thing, and she was, the big dinosaur comes in, she was like, nope, I'm done. Took it right off, and nope, I'm out of this. It's too real. And
yeah, it can be scary. I think I had one of the VR headsets once for the PlayStation. I played Resident Evil.
Oh, yeah.
Sold it after that. Never played it ever again.
Yeah.
Horrible.
A little too close.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it was good for me.
So we saw a presentation this morning that talked a little bit about how Apple is actually pretty good for AI. And I was going to say the speaker here, Speaker X, I'm talking about the Speaker X section this morning, was talking a little bit about, that we're on our third generation of Apple's AI, computer. And it certainly felt like Apple trying to reframe the story that they're quote unquote behind on AI. So as you think about, this summer's experiences, as we think about how Apple's going to, change the world here again on us for macOS Next and iOS Next, what kind of actual AI implementations are you interested in, or are you not at all?
Drafting emails. In fact, one of the guys that work used ChatGPT to draft an email, and it was because the language was so totally different from his own. We kind of gave him like an absolute slagging for a week. But yeah, in reality, AI is going to be, I think, quite a useful tool for how do I frame this, and then you can then kind of fill in the blanks. Like, how do I frame this documentation in a way that it's user friendly? Because some people kind of think in a way, whereas AI obviously picks from machine learning, kind of like from pattern recognition, what's kind of getting more kind of traction, and can from there kind of like create probably a documentation that's kind of a bit more user friendly. It's not quite there yet, but I can see that happening in the future for sure.
Mm-hmm.
As an end user, I just appreciate the mundane details like better autocorrect and better like duplicate photo detection,
Yes.
automatic content selections and things like that. Like continuing to refine those and make those easier to use and more accurate. I appreciate that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say I find myself very interested in the photo autocorrect, the photo adjustment tools and models that are out there, as well as autocorrect. I mean, ducking autocorrect is always right now, and it's actually pretty impressive in a lot of ways that they've really kind of taken that approach and gone that direction with it.
And from an IT perspective, there's some on-device machine learning when you click later on the software update to determine what later actually means.
Yes.
And I find that I don't quite understand the times that it chooses sometimes, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Having that just be smarter about, okay, it looks like you don't use your computer during lunch hour instead of in the middle of the night, like maybe suggest that or something like that. I don't know, but I'm sure there are smart people working on improving those features.
Absolutely. Liam?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that's going to affect our everyday lives, isn't it? Sort of in the next few years. I mean, it's completely blown, but I think the big thing for me as an end user is summarizing meetings. Because like taking notes, I'm terrible. Multitasking is trying to listen, have a conversation, take a note. I just, no. But being able to, jump on a Teams call and get it to summarize me and send me the notes is absolutely something I want, and I will pay whatever for.
Yeah.
Because it will save me a lot of time and a lot of hassle and go, wait, what did we actually talk about? So things like that from an end user perspective. But you just don't know, do you? I mean, it's moving incredibly fast. Apple obviously, we'll see what comes from them in a couple of weeks and see what new stuff they're going to throw our way. But it's just moving so fast. You're just trying to keep up is a challenge in itself. So we'll really see. I mean, obviously, Microsoft released their Copilot PC this week, and trying to digest that and what that actually means. And it's interesting now they're benchmarking that against the M4 processor, which is in an iPad. So Apple's marketing is clearly working in that department. So, yeah, it's interesting saying, I've got a better AI PC than you, and that's the conversation now. How that's moved on and changed, from a few years ago and things like that. So it's interesting, seeing where it all goes.
But I also appreciate when people selectively choose not to introduce some AI feature just because it's trendy.
Yes.
I know this is not a new opinion or groundbreaking by any means, but there are some dangers with AI, and to have that like auto-generate some bash script that you're going to deploy on your MDM is maybe not a great idea. You could use it as a starter, you can use it as a guide for what you're writing, but you are ultimately going to be responsible for what goes out there, not the computer. So I appreciate when companies build frameworks around like guiding you towards what you want, what you are going to do, but it doesn't do the thing for you.
Yes.
That's important.
Well, and I think that we talked about that on the panel yesterday in terms of, computers making management decisions. Or, AI is acting as quote-unquote employees when they can't be disciplined, when they can't be let go, and those kind of things. I think that is a really interesting, perspective as we go into considering more AI. And I'm right with you on the note-taker thing. I was going to say we have a couple of internal tools that we use on calls for those kind of things, and it's great to get the summary after the fact with, hey, by the way, you said you were going to do this. Go actually and do it, please, is really quite wonderful without having to have another person just sitting there and taking notes, when that can be handled by the machines. The robots are pretty good at that. and I'm going to continue to let them be. But you know, I was going to say the future that we find ourselves in as admins, being able to properly control that, I think is the biggest thing that I'm most interested in, is that how do we set the guardrails for our organization for these new functionalities? And I'm really hopeful that that's been paid close attention to. And I have a feeling it will be. I have a feeling that Apple does this in a very thoughtful way.
Yeah.
They tend to be pretty thoughtful about these things. So. Well, wonderful. I was going to say we're probably going to wrap up just a little bit early today. I want to say a huge thanks to our wonderful conference organizing committee, especially all of those folks who hid the ducks. Can we talk about the people who are hiding ducks out there? There were a lot of ducks hidden in really clever spots. So I was going to say we gave away almost all of our keychains at the Mac Admins Foundation. So I want to say thank you to everybody who came by the booth with their ducks and all of those things. I want to say a huge thanks to Max and James and Aid and Alex, who's hiding over in there in the wings to take it over here to wrap us up. But I want to say a huge thanks for everybody who came out to this great event, and we'll see you all next year. And with that, I will say thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Tom.